up with eugenics, and then they thought power, well, what about the supernatural? So they had seances and all this other fucking bullshit. And anyways, some of these people that were into the supernatural or whatever had big influences on some other political people. And in the end, the fascists started this movement that was a consequence of the will to power. Oh, even psychology, the three schools of psychology. There's Freud, Jung, and Adler. Freud, totally preoccupied by sex, so the two instincts, personal survival, species survival instinct is sex. Personal survival is the will to power. That was Adler. And Carl Jung, he didn't look at it that way at all. He totally interpreted a lot of different things in different ways. And when I told you about the compass, for instance, when I said thinking and feeling are the two rational processes, the only two rational processes that the mind works. If you pick thinking as your dominant way of dealing with life, well, your feelings go into your subconscious, because one end of the compass is conscious, and if you concentrate on that, the other end is going to be in the subconscious. And I'm intuitive, but people that do feelings, they have to rely, because they're not thinking, on their intuition. I only discovered this actually because of Carol, because she doesn't think. So she has to rely on her intuition, and she's a really smart girl, actually. She impressed me a lot of times by the things she said or did or whatever, but she's still fucked up, it's too bad. Anyway, and Adler, by the way, so that's the two schools. Freud was the species survival instinct, and Adler was the will to power, was the major cause of the psychology of the human being under Adler. Luckily, nobody really took him seriously. But the will to power, it dominated most of the German philosophers. All those famous German philosophers? They all believed in this will to power, or what they would reinterpret as some other form of something that was the will to power, Anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is Darwin and Nietzsche, Darwin was very religious, but Nietzsche used that evolution as an excuse to say God doesn't need to exist because nature makes everything. So in the 19th century, the growth of secularism became rampant, and science became important. And that's why we ended up in the 20th century, First and Second World War, because of all this fucking bullshit. The will to power was the nation's arming for the First World War. It was like an arms race that was way beyond what it should be. And then alliances ended up causing the war when that guy was assassinated by that idiot there in Russia. Anyways, and of course the Second World War is a consequence of the First World War. And the will to power is an excuse for racism, which is what the fascism and Nazism is. By the way, fascism started in Italy, and Hitler admired Mussolini, and that's why he imitated a lot of what Mussolini did. Everybody says, oh, Hitler was really smart. Well, not kind of. He was just a corporal or something. He was never much in the armed forces. He was a failed artist, and is a failed human being. He was on the street a lot of the time after the war. And he didn't do very well before the war, and his relationships were shit. I shouldn't say that. The reason why I'm saying I shouldn't say that is I read this Psychohistory of Hitler. It was a really long book, actually. It was some psychiatrists who got together and tried to analyze Hitler or whatever. And apparently, this is what they said in the book. His favorite sex act was to have a woman squat over him and shit in his face. Does that sound like fun? Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's a weird guy for sure. Oh well. Oh boy. So, yeah, this is a really neat conversation, man. We should do this more often. Do you mind though, or are you okay? Eh?
Not at all.
Oh, good. I just plugged it in because it was heading towards 20% pretty fast. Yeah.